Hey guys, make a video on PALI and NIVF. Short of both, so it'll be a short focus video on two different patterns. Um, so not a single long today. So PALI was really interesting because it's actually a market open long pattern, right? Because we got the quick pullback. It was soaking right on the 1 minute 50, right? Um, the only problem is that I didn't want to long off the 1 minute 50 in the pre-market because the volume's really low, and then it popped right before market open, and I was like, well, um, I said in the Discord, I was like, you're gonna want to wait for a pullback, right? Whenever you get like a high volume pop, whenever you get like a high volume, 2, 3 green candle pop above the 1 minute 9, you always want to wait for the pullback, right? That's pretty much universally true. Wait for the pullback to the 1 minute 20 in the vast majority of situations. Never chase above the 1 minute 9. So the 1 minute 20 was right here. So it actually soaked right on the 1 minute 20. However, when I was looking at the book, so this is an example of where the candlestick pattern looked good. The volume looked decent. It was trading 500,000 shares a minute. We got a pullback to the 1 minute 20 and a rip through the empty space, right? So a lot of it looked good. Have a lot of people who took this long. The only reason I didn't take it was because the book had a lot of ass kind of stacked up higher, and I was kind of concerned that it would hit resistance and not work as well. And if you compare this to like my videos on INVO and NIVF yesterday, those market open longs had books that showed similar weakness into some type of support level, but had very, very little offers on the ass to the upside, right? So we can actually just look at this super quickly. Here's PALI. So here's the 1 minute 50 soak. Here's that pullback into. I always love a nice 930 pullback into a support level. It's usually very nice, but we'll go and look at PALI at market open, and you can kind of see that there's a lot of ass stacked up here, right? So I saw the 1 minute 20 bid, I saw the soak, I saw the 930 pullback, I saw the pre-market structure, I saw the market open volume. So there's all these factors, right? But the book can save you a lot of times if you think it doesn't look, conducive to like, you're short or you're long, right? So, this started going and I actually felt really dumb. I was like, oh man, it's rocketing straight up the 1 minute 20, like straight up, and then like 900K shares, went from 300K to 900K volume, and I'm like, oh man, dude, like, it's like, did I just miss like a 30-40% long? I felt really dumb, right? But the book just kind of turned me off. I was like, okay, I'll just keep an eye on it. So it hits 750, fake $half resistance. Remember, high date's all the way at 8.2, so I'm not really looking to short sub 750 on a stock that's picking up volume, right? Has a potentially bullish pre-market structure and a potentially bullish market open pattern, right? So there's no reason to really trade, even though there's a lack of bids right here. It's not the time to make the read. There's too many other factors that are bullish to try to make a short read here, right? And then I go sideways, and this always happens before initiate. Not always, but this happens a lot, where they stack a bid, they stack a bid, they stack another bid, and they push it. So this bid was interesting. It was 68,000, right? And then the thing about, there's times where big bids could be really bullish and big bids could be really bearish, and you never quite know which one it's going to be. We'll go back to the chart though. But first of all, I remembered in low flow too. I was gonna remember like what patterns have worked recently, especially like the day before, and we kind of were, yesterday we had this pattern, very similar market open, aggressive push towards highs on MLEC that knifed. I missed this play. Totally missed this play. Missed the long and the short. So I remember that. And I was like, man, I missed MLEC, and that was a play that market open push to highs that stalled. So when I saw that this candle didn't push. This candle stalled. This candle broke the $8 ask. So there's an $8 ask on the book. That's this big ask right here. Zoom out a little bit. It filled it, and then it knife backed. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. A little stall right below high day, right? So there's always a chance in low floats that that's a long trap. There's a chance that it's just trying to shake out some longs before another squeeze, right? You never know. But long trap is on the table, and MLEC faded yesterday on a very similar push, right? So what I saw was a nice pattern. I always like to make a read on short side is when they do a big support swipe and a big reclaim, right? So I saw this pull back to 7.5 and this push back up to 8. And now I'm making a read. I remember that. And now I'm also debating, is this bid going to hold or are they just going to pull it, right? Or is it just going to get sold into, right? So there's a lot that I'm thinking about, but when I saw this push, I saw the lack of bid follow-up, and I saw them filling some ask up here. You can kind of see this ask getting filled. This is a new ask that got put in. This ask got filled. And once this like 790 ask got filled and it started to stall, this is where I started going short, right? I just started going short because I liked that I had tight risk. I'm just risking, the high day ask right here. And I'm ultimately making a bet that this bid either gets pulled or it gets taken out, right? But I like that MLEC worked the day before. And I like that it took out that $8 ask, it pulled back, and now we have new ask kind of showing up, getting filled, right? So I just went in, got a nice dump through, it was actually a downhaul through VWAP. And then this is very interesting, Silk. I would always remember this type of Silk. This is something that's worth studying right here because a lot of times near market open, whenever you get hyper controlled, choppy price action below VWAP, they're often soaking VWAP for a rotation. And then once it got to about here, I said in my Discord, I'm like, oh, I'm expecting a VWAP rotation. But the main thing I'm looking at, because I'm still short from over here, I was like, the main thing I'm looking at is the volume, right? Volume will help. I always say volume determines pattern, right? So soak volume is often indicative of how likely a stock is to push, So when, I'm looking at 100K per minute, 110, 120, I'm like, okay, it's doing the choppy soak pattern right on the 1 minute 50. So I called out the quick 1 minute 50 pullback. They had bids on the 1 minute 50, and it's doing the choppy VWAP pattern. So I was like, oh, I'm expecting a rotation, but the volume isn't super impressive. And I'm also looking at the book and what happened on the book. What happened was really interesting. Right before, again, they did the same pattern they did over here. Soak, soak, soak. Throw up some bids, initiate, and they did the same thing. Soak, 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 throw up some bids, initiate. But this time, the 68,000 ask guy came back over here, right? It's the same guy who's over here. Came back over here. I was like, hey, this guy showed up. And he got filled. They threw up these bids, and he got filled. And I'm like, well, if it starts to rotate back towards high day, I'll get out. But I'm just going to make a read on this play. And then something kind of very classic happened. Not only did it stall, we got a support swipe in the push. So now these bids got taken out. This stalled, especially this push stalled. And we start to see bids lower actually get pulled, right? So these bids got taken out. These bids got pulled. Book is getting more empty. We're stalling. There's only this bidder really right here. He's kind of like the last hope. Otherwise, we're going to go all the way back down to the low sevens. And yeah, they got taken out, and it went straight down, and that was the pretty much the end of the play. And I just kind of got out. The rest, but I did take some off, right? I took some off over here because I saw the 1 minute 50 soak, right? So a lot of my covers, like in situations like these, come from where a potential long would be, and a potential long would be a downhaul into a 1 minute 50 soak into a rotation. That's a very low float type pattern to do. Especially I saw the choppy controlled action. I saw some bids. And and got out, and that was that play. But yeah, some big lessons though. Kind of MLEC replication. It filled a lot of ask on these pushes, right? Kind of, and the soak volume, right? Kind of like this low volume soak often leads to you know, we didn't have a single candle here breaking over 1 million shares a minute, and then it started drying up, and then it started drying up even more over here, right? So, potentially weak, and then this I also shorted. Yep, sorry, I had to make an edit. So NIVF, I missed the long completely. I saw this long right here. Mikey Underdog took this long. I did not take this long. There's some clean 1 minute 20 soak, lower high paint. So remember, like anytime, I'm actually going to zoom out over here. Anytime you trade multi-day runners, you have to look at the previous days, right? Because the price action moves on a multi-day time frame. You have to look at the stock on a multi-day time frame. And a couple, interesting points on the previous day. Obviously, 189 high a day, but not only that, we had a lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high. We had a huge walk, only lower high walk down, right? And a lot of times on multi-day runners, what they'll do is they'll walk a stock down in the afternoon, or even over multiple days. You'll see a multi-day walk down of just nothing but lower highs, especially once you start zooming out on longer time frames. And they'll use a similar structure, but instead of on like an intraday basis, for example, like a 1 minute chart, it's more of on a multi-day basis on a 15-minute or 1 hour chart, right? So, but the same concept applies where, they're trapping backside liquidity for a squeeze later, right? So, multi-day runners, unless there's like something like WISA, my WISA short on day 2, unless there's like an aggressive long trap pattern, I'm usually not looking to short it because my general thinking is that multi-day runners are strong, and that somebody is buying a lot of shares to support this thing. Like that's generally how I think about it, right? I'm less concerned about the gapping percentage, and I'm more concerned about the chart paint and the volume, right? Because this is how multi-day runners, this is how a multi-day runner that's up 200% goes up 300% or 400%, 500%, right? They don't just magically go up 400%. There's it's volume and liquidity traps, right? So, so we had a big push towards 189 at market open. This is driving me insane. Big push to 189. Stalls right under it, right? And I was looking at this candle. I was like, should I reserve shares and take this? I'm like, nah, multi-day runner. I'm going to kind of avoid it. I saw the dump. Again, I kind of thought I was pretty dumb for skipping out on the trade. And then I saw this kind of like manipulated grind back up. And I actually thought, 170 is painted. They're going to push it, pull it, and then maybe squeeze, maybe make another lower high, squeeze it later, that type of thing. But again, I'm not looking to short it because it's a multi-day runner. And it broke. I saw it soaking right. There's a bid right on the 1 minute 20. And I saw this push, and I saw look at the volume come in, right? This is so bullish, right? 700K, 1 million, 1.1 million, 1.8 million. I saw a big volume coming. I'm like, I guess it's just going now. You know what I mean? But I want to talk about this, right? Because I think a lot of shorts I used to have a lot of trouble trading stuff like this right here, like this push right here. And I used to take a lot of unnecessary losses until I kind of made a framework that allowed me to avoid it, right? So, and you see this in a pre-market too, where anytime smaller volume becomes bigger volume, you want to be very careful, right? Especially if that bigger volume is increasing and consistent, right? In general, and I said this in many of my videos, like, whenever I see a stock make a new high day, new high day, new high day, and the volume is just very steady or increasing, I consider it bullish, right? And I consider a lot of price action that happens on the pullbacks to be bullish, right? I was actually looking for like some type of Momo pattern. I'm like, okay, new high, new high, new high, amazing volume. And I was like, maybe something on the 1 minute 20 to 1 minute 50. And then what they did is they just walked it down here in between the two and instant squeeze it. And I'm like, well, I didn't really have a read on that. There were bids on this pullback, by the way. I just didn't have a read on it. Um, but I'm never on stocks making new high days. I am never trying to guess the high day. I used to do things like count the number of highs that it pushed and stuff like that, and it was too inconsistent. That's the problem, especially once the big volume comes in. So now I take a much um, a much kind of bigger picture approach, which is stuff you hear me say about like waiting, wait 45 minutes or an hour and a half, wait for the chart, wait for the pullback, wait for the higher lows, wait for some type of backside swipe, wait for something, right? There's like, you don't have to guess within 1 to 10 minutes after high day, like where the pullback's going to come in, right? You can wait, right? There's usually, and a lot of these plays, there's so much liquidity that, walk downs like this, lower high, lower high, lower high, lower low, you could see the downtrend. A lot of times on these high volume stocks, they soak, usually on an MA, and rotate it, right? You don't have to guess. You don't have to guess the high day candle, and you don't got to guess the first lower high that comes in. You don't have to guess either of those, right? And yeah, do I miss plays that go straight down? Of course, I do. But at the same time, I avoid taking losses on the front side, right? And I'm able to hit trades like this. So this is my trade. And I think if you've been watching my videos, this trade should make some more sense about why I took it in terms of swiping lower highs and backside levels and that type of thing. But going back to this, so a couple interesting things. We had a high day clear out here that came down, pushed, and then knifed again. And this is something that I consider to be a minor bearish factor, where a lot of times on really overextended stocks, they'll give like a short pattern, they'll squeeze that short pattern, and then they fade it. So when I saw this pullback, I said in my Discord, and also Mikey's Discord, it's like, this could be the beginning of a midday pullback, right? It's kind of like, I used to call this one more squeeze, where it's like you give like an obvious short pattern that everyone chases, and then you squeeze them, and then you do the real pull, right? It's a classic low float stuff. So what do I see? I see a lower high, I see a lower high, I see the 1 minute 50, and I see them take out 2.5. I see it take out 2.5 again, and they start to rotate it. I'm like, oh, okay. We're getting a possible rotation from the walk down, right? This is a walk down. And also remember, midday, just patterns happen on longer time frames. Like once the initial Momo is gone and, the 1 minute 9 and the 1 minute 20 start getting, broken, and you have multiple candles closing below the 1 minute 9 and 1 minute 20, you start to transition into midday volume, which means in midday price action, which means, a lot of longs and shorts are going to happen sometime later, right? So what am I looking at? Well, I'm looking at these lower highs. Where are these lower highs? Right around 280. This was 279, and this is 283. I'm like, all right, 280 is a good level. And then I saw this lower high. I saw this lower high. I saw this pullback. I'm like, okay, if this pushes, and we start getting a little bid prop like structure here, I'm gonna make a read above 280. I was like, 280 is kind of the level that I'm looking for, because that's where these lower highs are. So we get the rotation, and I'm like, all right, let me look what the book looks like, right? I'm getting ready for the short. And I want to be, one other major bearish factor that I always knew was bearish, but I'm starting to incorporate more and more into my trading, is the aggressiveness of the squeeze. A lot of times, the more aggressive the short squeezes that led to this move, the higher the odds a long trap pattern like this is to work. Right? It's the same thing with MLEC yesterday, right? MLEC had a hyper-aggressive pre-market push, which makes long trap patterns. Now I missed this trade, right? But I remember it. I remember the hyper-aggressive push. I remember the long traps. I was like, the more up only and the more extended the push is to the front side, the better the odds, just because there's a lack of consolidation, there's a lack of support levels, and there's a lot of long trap manipulation games up here. Right, it makes these trades a lot better, right? And look at where the stock is now, right? All the way in the 170s. So go back to this. I saw the hyper aggressive push. I saw this walk down. Now we learned that 1 minute 50 walk downs can be really strong, but the fact that it not only is it extended, but how it got extended, right? The aggressiveness of the push made me bearish bias, which made me look for the long trap, right? So, and then I just go to the book, go to this. Here's the up only push, and here is the 280 swipe, right? And this was about 40 minutes past high day, so I'm like, oh, that's a decent time frame. It's also swiping some lower highs, and the main thing I'm looking at is the bid support. You know, yeah, there's bids down here where the 1 minute 50 was, but are there bids on the pushes, right? A lot of times on long trap pushes, you know, especially as they start approaching their liquidity levels, bids start to get pulled, right? So there's some initial bids here. These bids get pulled, these bids get pulled, and now on the move up to 280, there's not a lot of bids on the book, so that's good. And then I wanted to see what happened after it swiped 280. So we had a quick swipe at 280, filled a bunch of asks, so that's common, right? Filled a bunch of ask, pulled back, and then I saw, and I was zoomed in real far when I saw, I was literally zoomed in this far when I was trading this. I was like, oh, let me see. And then I saw a pullback, and I saw the 280s start to get, these asks that were here start to get restacked here, right? And I knew outside of this bid, there wasn't a whole lot of bids to the downside. And once I started stalling, I was like, all right, I'll just go in here, right? I'll just go in the 270s, and that way my risk is kind of as tight as it can be. It started stalling. I started to zoom out a little bit more. You know, I was mostly looking at these asks up here as my risk in the 290s where high day was. And then there's a bunch of weird games they were playing, a bunch of really weird games they were playing, where they were throwing up like, throwing up a bunch of big bids and pulling those bids and stuff like that. I took some off here because it was below this these lows, and I was afraid of, this is the 15-minute 9 soak. You can see the 15-minute. I was afraid they were walking it down to the 15-minute 9 to rotate it, so I was like, let me take a little bit off down here. And then I took some off down here, and I'm actually still holding some. So we'll see what I don't know. Also, by the way, again, zooming out even more, this is like walk down, lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high. There's actually a lot of lower highs going into this close. So then again, it's pretty extended, so who knows. But I could see maybe some type of pre-market push tomorrow. Maybe not very big. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, you know, some big lessons with this. When you start getting increasing volume and new high, it's bullish. Somebody's buying consistently buying a massive amount of shares over, and then you have all these shares as support, right? I would recommend not trying to guess the top, right? Wait for the extension. You know, in this case, you know, this run was just $1.6 to $3, just straight. Besides one micro pullback that instantly got squeezed, just, I mean, like, look how aggressive this and this was. Super hyper aggressive. And then you just switch to midday, you know, have a bearish bias because, you know, overall it is worth to have a bearish bias the higher it goes, especially the more aggressive it is. And wait for some type of midday structure, right? Wait for the lower highs. Wait for some rotation, you know. And then if you do get, you know, backside lower highs getting taken out, make a read on the book. So anyways, that's it for today. 2 short patterns and they both worked, so that's always nice to see. So anyways, guys, have a good one. I'll see you tomorrow.